My name is Elena, and if you asked anyone in my family, they would probably describe me as the quiet one, or the one who never causes trouble. What they really mean is, the one we don't bother with. All my life, I've been compared to my older brother, Adrian. Adrian is the golden child, handsome, charming, the kind of man who could stumble into a room late and still be celebrated for just showing up. Meanwhile, I was the one left behind. My achievements were cute, but never enough. My successes always looked small compared to his, even when I worked twice as hard. When I received the news about his wedding, I didn't get a fancy invitation in the mail. I didn't even get a phone call. Instead, my mom casually mentioned it over the phone one evening, as if she were reminding me to pick up groceries. "Oh, and Elna," she said, her voice brisk. "Adrian's wedding is in 2 weeks. Of course you'll be there." I paused, expecting her to at least give me details, or say something kind. Instead, she added, "And don't forget, since you don't really have much going on, I told Adrian you'd help with serving drinks at the reception. You're good with that sort of thing, right?" I thought I misheard her. "You told him I'd serve drinks?" "Yes," she said, as if it were obvious. "It's the least you can do for your brother. He's starting this new chapter in life. And besides, it's not like you're contributing anything else." Her words stung like knives. Not a guest, not a sister, not even a part of the celebration. Just someone to carry trays and refill glasses. I swallowed hard. What if I don't want to? That's when her tone shifted. Cold, sharp, final. "Elena, don't start. This family has done so much for you. We pay for your apartment, don't we? You think you'd manage on your own? If you don't show up and help your brother, don't expect us to keep supporting you. Consider that carefully." The line went silent, but her words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. That night, I sat in my small apartment, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't angry, not at first. I was numb. My own mother had reduced me to nothing more than a servant at my brother's wedding. And worse, she had tied it to my independence, to my ability to even keep a roof over my head. I could have refused. I could have packed up and left, gone no contact, tried to survive on my own. But something inside me told me to wait, to be patient, to show up but not in the way they expected. Because what my mother didn't know was that I had something I had kept hidden for years. And when the right moment came, I would use it. Quiet, sharp, unshakable. And when I did, this wedding wouldn't be the fairy tale they wanted. It would be the day everything changed. When I arrived back home for the wedding, it felt less like returning to my family's house, and more like stepping onto a stage where I didn't belong. The air was thick with excitement, flowers everywhere, voices chattering about decorations, caterers, dresses, guest lists. And yet, not a single word was directed at me. My brother Adrian was at the center of it all, glowing like the sun, and everyone else, our parents included, were just satellites orbiting around him. People fussed over his suit fittings, his speech rehearsal, his hair. Even when he lifted a finger, it seemed like someone rushed to praise him. "Adrian, you're amazing! Adrian, this is going to be the wedding of the century." Meanwhile, I was handed a folded piece of paper by my mom. "These are your tasks," she said briskly, without even making eye contact. The paper listed things like pick up dry cleaning, confirm flowers, double-check seating chart, help usher guests. Not one mention of being a sister, a family member, or even a guest. Just errands. I swallowed hard and smiled faintly, pretending it didn't sting. But inside, it felt like being reduced to a shadow. Later that evening, as everyone gathered in the living room, I sat quietly in the corner. My dad was bragging about how Adrian had managed to land such a perfect match. My mom kept showing relatives old photos of him in college, telling the story of how, He's always been destined for greatness. No one asked about me, not my job, not my life, not even whether I was happy. At one point, Adrian walked by me, holding a glass of champagne. He smirked. "Thanks for running around today. At least you're useful for something, Lena." He didn't even lower his voice. A few people chuckled. My mother smiled like it was some harmless joke. I wanted to disappear. But then, something shifted. As I got up to take a tray of empty glasses back to the kitchen, I passed by Adrian's fiancée, Claire. She was standing near the hallway, whispering to her best friend. Her voice was sharp, worried. "I don't know how long I can keep pretending. Adrian still hasn't told them about—" And then she stopped, realizing I was within earshot. She gave me a tight smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Her friend quickly pulled her away. I froze, my heart pounding. Hasn't told them about what? For the first time that week, I felt something other than pain. I felt curious. Maybe Adrian's world wasn't as perfect as it looked. Maybe the golden child had secrets. And as much as my family dismissed me, ignored me, used me, I realized that being invisible had one advantage. I could see everything no one else noticed. That night, lying in the small guest room my mom had shoved me into, I couldn't sleep. My brother's words still burned in my ears, but so did Claire's. Something was hidden here, and I wasn't sure yet what it was, but I knew one thing. If the truth ever came out, Adrian's perfect world could come crashing down. The next morning, the house buzzed with preparations. It felt like a factory, more than a home phone's ringing, people rushing in and out, the scent of fresh flowers clashing with the smell of coffee and stress. I came downstairs quietly, hoping someone might at least say good morning. Instead, my mom glanced at me and frowned. "Lena, could you not just stand there? The photographer's coming for the pre-wedding shots. Don't get in the way." In the way, that's what I was to her. I bit my lip and moved toward the kitchen, only to find the caterer barking orders at his assistants. "Who are you?" he asked, mistaking me for one of his staff. Before I could answer, Adrian appeared, adjusting his tie, looking every bit the golden groom. "She's nobody," he said casually, brushing past me. His words stung sharper than glass, but what hurt more was how naturally they rolled off his tongue. Like it wasn't even an insult, just a fact. I wanted to scream, to remind him I was his sister, to ask my parents why they never stood up for me. But instead, I stayed quiet. Because what would be the point? By afternoon, guests began to arrive, family friends, distant relatives, colleagues Adrian wanted to impress. Everyone hugged him, clapped him on the back, told him how proud they were. When I passed by, I got polite nods, sometimes confusion in their eyes, as if wondering who I was. Invisible. Again. It wasn't until late evening that I found myself alone in the backyard, needing air. That's when I heard voices drifting from the veranda. Claire, his fiancée, was speaking to someone her best friend again, I think. Her voice trembled. He promised he'd tell them before the wedding, but he hasn't. If they find out after, it'll destroy everything. My pulse quickened. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. Her friend whispered back, "Maybe he never will. Maybe he's hoping it'll just disappear." Claire sighed, and the sound was heavy with fear. Secrets don't just disappear, they explode. The words lodged in my chest like a spark ready to ignite. I stepped back, my mind spinning. What secret? What could Adrian possibly be hiding that would make Claire so terrified? For a moment, I almost felt guilty for listening. But then I remembered the smirk on Adrian's face when he called me useful for something. I remembered my dad's silence when I was insulted, my mom's dismissal, the years of being treated like the afterthought in my own family. Maybe this was justice, finally seeing cracks in their golden child's perfect facade. When I walked back inside, Adrian was surrounded by people, laughing loudly, basking in admiration. He caught my eye briefly, and his grin widened. "You'll never know what it's like to be me, Lena," he said smugly, raising his glass. Everyone chuckled like it was just another harmless joke. But this time, I didn't just swallow the pain. Because maybe, just maybe, soon he would know what it felt like to be exposed. And I was the only one in the house invisible enough to catch it all. The rest of the evening, I moved like a shadow through the house. No one noticed me, no one asked me to join conversations. And for the first time, that invisibility didn't feel like a curse. It felt like freedom. I could observe. I could listen. Adrian's laugh echoed in every corner, too loud, too polished, like he was performing. His fiancée, Claire, smiled dutifully at his side, but I couldn't unsee the cracks. Her eyes darted nervously whenever he spoke, her fingers twisting the napkin on her lap until it nearly tore. And I remembered her words. "If they find out after, it'll destroy everything." My heart pounded. So what was he hiding? I slipped upstairs when no one was watching, drawn by a reckless impulse. Adrian's room looked like a showroom, perfectly tailored suits laid out, cologne bottles arranged like trophies, a stack of invitations tossed aside. But on the desk, half buried under papers, was a letter. It wasn't addressed to him. It was addressed to Claire. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. "Claire," it began, "I know the truth. You can't marry him until you tell them. You owe it to yourself and to them." No name signed at the bottom, just an initial. M. I read it twice, my brain buzzing. Someone knew something big enough to demand it be revealed before the wedding. I heard footsteps and shoved the letter back just as the door creaked open. Adrian's voice slithered into the room. "What are you doing here?" I froze, caught. "Just looking for the bathroom," I muttered, avoiding his eyes. He smirked, stepping closer. "You always were a terrible liar." His gaze narrowed, but then he waved it off. "Stay out of my things, Lena. You don't belong here." He left, the door slamming shut behind him. My knees felt weak, but inside, something shifted. For years, they told me I didn't matter, that I was invisible, that I had no place in this family's picture-perfect portrait. But now I held a piece of a puzzle no one else saw. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Claire's voice. Secrets don't just disappear, they explode. I thought of the letter, of Adrian's arrogance, of how everyone treated me like I didn't exist. Maybe I wasn't meant to expose him out of revenge. Maybe it was just fate that I was the only one listening closely enough, quiet enough, ignored enough, to hear the truth leaking through the cracks. And when the wedding day arrived, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Adrian's secret wouldn't stay buried. Not if I had anything to do with it. The morning of Adrian's wedding dawned bright and sharp, the kind of crisp air that almost mocked me with its perfection. From the outside, everything looked like a fairy tale. Flowers draped over the archway, the church bells waiting to sing, photographers buzzing like bees around a perfect bloom. But inside me? A storm. I dressed quietly, choosing a simple navy dress. Nothing flashy, nothing to make me stand out. That wasn't my role, was it? My parents hadn't even checked to see if I was ready. Their whole attention was locked on Adrian, my golden brother, their pride, their flawless creation. Still, as I looked in the mirror, something shifted. For once, I didn't hate my reflection. There was steel in my eyes, calm in my posture. No one expected me to matter today, and that gave me power. At the venue, chaos swirled around. My father barked orders at the staff. My mother floated like royalty, and Adrian shone like he'd been cast in some play, charming every guest that came within 10 feet. But Claire? Her face was pale, her smile brittle. She laughed at the right times, hugged the right relatives, but her fingers betrayed her, tapping against her bouquet. trembling when she thought no one was looking. I watched her. I remembered the letter. You can't marry him until you tell them. What did she know? The ceremony began, and everyone fell silent as Claire walked down the aisle. She was radiant, yes, but there was a tightness in her shoulders that made my stomach twist. Adrian's eyes sparkled with triumph, like he already owned her. The priest began speaking, words about love, about vows, about truth. And I swear, I saw Claire flinch at that last word. Truth! My chest tightened. I almost wanted to scream, to stand up and stop it right there. But I didn't. Not yet. Something told me the truth didn't need me to force it. It was already clawing its way to the surface. When the vows came, Adrian's voice rang out confident, rehearsed, flawless. He swore devotion, love, loyalty, every syllable dripping with arrogance. Then it was Claire's turn. Her lips parted. She spoke softly at first, but her voice wavered, cracked. She paused, her throat tightening. Her eyes scanned the room, desperate, almost pleading. And then they landed on me. For one split second, our eyes locked. And I knew she wanted someone, anyone, to see her, to understand. I gave the smallest nod, just enough to say, I hear you, you're not alone. Claire's hands shook as she lowered the bouquet. I can't do this. Gasps erupted in the room. Adrian's face froze, his mask cracking. My parents looked horrified, whispers darting through the pews like wildfire. The ceremony came to a screeching halt, and Claire's words hung in the air like a blade. The secret was no longer hidden, but what she said next would decide everything. The silence after Claire's words was deafening. You could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the distant cough of a guest in the back pew, the click of someone's phone stopping a video. Everyone was frozen, waiting for her to explain. Adrian was the first to move. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist like he could hold the whole situation together by force. His smile fake desperate was plastered on his face as he hissed through clenched teeth. Claire! Say your vows! But she didn't. She pulled her wrist free and took a step back. Her chest rose and fell in uneven breaths, her eyes glassy but sharp. When she spoke again, her voice was louder, steadier. I can't marry you, Adrian. Not after what I know. Gasps rippled through the church. My mother's hand flew to her pearls. My father's jaw locked so tight I thought his teeth would crack. Adrian's mask shattered. What are you talking about? Claire swallowed hard, scanning the guests, then locking eyes with my parents. Her voice cracked, but she pushed forward. You told me the truth, months ago, that Adrian wasn't the man everyone believed he was, that his perfect image was a lie you'd been protecting for years. The room erupted in whispers. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. My father stood abruptly, his booming voice cutting through the noise. That's enough! This girl is hysterical! Sit down! But Claire's spine straightened. Her fear was melting into something else resolve. No, I won't sit down. Everyone deserves to know who Adrian really is. She turned back to the crowd, her hands trembling, but her words clear. Adrian didn't get into law school on his own. He cheated. He bought his way in. He's been living a lie, funded and covered up by his parents. Every achievement, every accolade it was never earned. It was paid for. The church fell into chaos. Guests gasped, muttered. Some even stood up, craning their necks to see my parents' reactions. Adrian's face drained of color. He lunged forward, hissing, Claire, shut your mouth! But she stepped back again, her voice rising. And that's not all. There's something else, something you never wanted me to say out loud. Adrian, you hurt people. You think no one knows, but I know. And I won't marry a man who destroys lives and calls it ambition. My father's face turned red, veins bulging in his temples. "This is a disgrace," he roared. "You will regret this, young lady." But Claire didn't falter. The guests were no longer whispering. They were watching, judging. Some with pity, some with anger. Phones were out, cameras recording. And through it all, I sat frozen, my nails digging into my palms. Because for the first time, it wasn't me in the center of humiliation. It was Adrian, the golden son. And for once, the truth wasn't whispered behind closed doors. It was out in the open, impossible to bury. Claire had just set fire to the golden pedestal my brother stood on, and there was no going back. For a moment, the church was chaos. Guests stood from their pews, whispering fiercely, some clutching their pearls, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Phones were raised, recording every second. Claire stood alone at the altar, trembling but defiant, while Adrian's face contorted with rage. "Turn those cameras off," my father thundered, his voice echoing through the high ceilings. But no one listened. If anything, more phones appeared, their little red dots blinking like beacons of truth. Adrian lunged forward, his hand raised not in affection, but in fury. "You think you can ruin me? You ungrateful little—" Before he could finish, Claire stepped back, her voice cutting through his venom. "Don't touch me." Her words were sharp, final. It was the first time I had ever seen her look at him not with love, but with disgust. The crowd gasped again. And then— silence. Adrian froze, his hands suspended midair. He realized what everyone else already saw, that the golden sun had just shown his true face. The mask had cracked wide open. "Adrian!" my mother hissed, rushing forward to grab his arm, pulling it down with a trembling grip. Her face was pale, her lips pressed thin, but her eyes darted wildly around the room, calculating, panicking. "This wedding is over," Claire whispered, her voice steady now. "I won't marry you, and I won't be part of your lies." With that, she tore off the engagement ring, letting it clatter onto the marble floor. The sound echoed louder than any words. Gasps turned into murmurs. Some guests stood to leave, shaking their heads in disgust. A woman muttered, "Disgraceful," as she pulled her husband toward the door. Another guest, an older man, crossed his arms and said loudly enough for all to hear, "I always knew something was off with that boy." Adrian's fury boiled over. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "This is your fault. You poisoned her, didn't you? You've always been jealous, always trying to ruin me." All eyes turned to me. My throat tightened. But before I could even form a response, Claire shook her head. "No, Adrian. She didn't say a word. I found out the truth on my own. And maybe you should stop blaming your sister for everything that's wrong in your life." The words hit harder than any slap. For once, someone defended me, publicly, boldly right in front of my parents. My father's face was crimson, veins bulging in his forehead. "Enough! This circus is over! Everyone out!" he barked at the guests. His booming authority might have once worked, but not today. Not with half the church live-streaming the scandal. The guests didn't obey. They lingered, hungry for more drama, watching my family's perfect image crumble piece by piece. And I just sat there, numb, my heart pounding in disbelief. For the first time in my life, the spotlight wasn't on me as the disappointment. It was on Adrian, the golden son. And for the first time, the world was finally seeing what I had always known. The ride back to the house was suffocating. No one spoke. My father's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned bone white. My mother sat in the front passenger seat, dabbing at her temples with a tissue, muttering under her breath about shame and embarrassment. Adrian sat beside me in the back, radiating fury. His jaw clenched so hard, I thought his teeth might crack. His eyes burned holes into me, as if I alone had orchestrated the collapse of his perfect life. When we finally pulled into the driveway of our family's grand home, My father slammed the car door so hard the sound echoed down the street. He stormed inside without waiting for anyone, his footsteps heavy and furious. "Inside," he barked. "All of you." We obeyed like we always had. The living room felt colder than usual, the shadows long and heavy, despite the expensive chandelier glowing overhead. My father paced the rug like a general about to deliver a sentence. "You humiliated us," he roared, pointing a trembling finger at Adrian. "Do you realize what you've done? Years of reputation, years of building this family's standing ruined in one night?" Adrian threw his arms up. "Me? You're blaming me? She's the one who filled Claire's head with lies." His finger jabbed toward me. I flinched, but before I could speak, my father rounded on me like a predator. His eyes were molten steel. "Is it true? Did you meddle in this? Did you push her to walk away?" For a split second, I wanted to defend myself, to shout, "No, I didn't say a word." Claire saw through him all by herself. But then I realized it wouldn't matter. They'd never believe me. They never had. So I stayed silent. My father's nostrils flared. Silence is guilt. Adrian smirked, smug, as though my quietness confirmed his story. But then, something unexpected. My mother spoke. Her voice was quiet, but sharp enough to cut glass. "Maybe," she said slowly, "you should be asking Adrian why Claire believed those lies so easily. Maybe, just maybe, there was truth in them." The room froze. Adrian's mouth fell open. My father spun toward her, eyes wide. "What are you saying?" She folded her arms. "I'm saying the girl didn't walk out of that church for no reason. If Adrian's perfect, why was she so quick to leave?" The air thickened. For once, my mother wasn't shielding Adrian. She was questioning him. Adrian sputtered, his face flushing deep red. "You're taking her side? You're supposed to defend me." My mother's lips pressed thin. "I defended you long enough." My father slammed his fist on the table so hard, a glass toppled and shattered on the floor. "This family is tearing apart because of weakness. Enough!" His voice cracked like a whip, silencing us. But in that silence, I felt something shift. For the first time, I wasn't the only one being doubted. The golden mask Adrian wore was slipping, not just in front of the world, but inside our home. And I knew. This was only the beginning. That night, sleep was impossible. The house felt like a battlefield after the first round of fire smoke still lingering, everyone wounded, but no one retreating. I lay awake in my room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled echoes of my parents arguing downstairs. "She made us look like fools," my father's voice boomed. "Maybe Adrian isn't as innocent as you think," my mother shot back, sharper than I'd ever heard her. The words twisted and tangled, but the meaning was clear. For the first time in my life, someone in this house was daring to challenge my brother's throne. By morning, however, my father had made up his mind. He summoned us all to the dining room. The table was set as if for an important guest, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, a pitcher of water sweating on a tray. But the tension was so thick it choked the air. Adrian slouched in his chair, looking furious and humiliated. My mother sat upright, lips pressed into a thin line. I sat at the far end, trying to prepare myself for whatever storm was about to hit. My father entered last, his suit pressed, his tie perfectly knotted. He carried a folder in his hand, papers stacked neatly inside. He didn't sit. He stood at the head of the table, towering over us all. "This family," he began, his voice slow, deliberate, "is falling apart because of disloyalty, weakness, and betrayal, and I will not allow it." His gaze cut across the table and landed on me. It felt like a blade. "You," he said, pointing, "are no longer part of this household." The words slammed into me like a physical blow. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay still. Adrian smirked, smug satisfaction painted across his face. "You will pack your things and leave," my father continued coldly. "If you cannot stand by your family, then you are not family. Do you understand?" I swallowed hard. For a moment, I considered pleading that I hadn't done anything wrong, that I had been nothing but quiet, loyal, patient. But what would it change? His mind was made up long before this conversation began. "Yes," I whispered. My voice didn't tremble, even though my chest felt like it was caving in. "Good," he said curtly. He placed the folder on the table. "And as for Adrian," Adrian straightened, expecting praise, maybe a new plan to restore his glory. But instead, my father's tone hardened even further. "You will fix this mess. You will restore this family's reputation. And until you do, you will not see a single cent from me." Adrian's jaw dropped. "What? You can't." "I can," my father thundered. "And I will. You've shamed this family. Now you'll clean it up." The smugness drained from Adrian's face, replaced by panic. For once, the punishment wasn't mine alone. I glanced at my mother. She was watching me, not Adrian, her expression unreadable. But in her eyes, I caught a flicker of something. Maybe regret, maybe guilt, maybe recognition. When I rose from the table, no one stopped me. I walked upstairs, packed my things quietly, and closed the door to my room behind me. But as I zipped my bag, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time, I wasn't just being cast aside. I was being freed, and they didn't yet realize the letter I had sent. The one that would arrive at my father's office in just a few days would change everything.